Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more Hemi-Sync podcasts, such as Episode 8 with Dean Radin, podcasts that aren't necessarily associated with any particular Hemi-Sync product, but simply feature fascinating guests and subjects associated with the frontiers of consciousness research and understanding, please consider joining our exclusive Patreon page and get some great discounts on Hemi-Sync products in the bargain. Thanks for watching.
Hey, thanks for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, which is probably most of you, I'm Garrett Stevens, Chairman and President of Hemi-Sync. We're a conscious media company known for a proprietary binaural beats-based audio guidance technology that induces certain states of consciousness, everything from sleep to relaxation, meditation, and concentration and tasks of vigilance. And then joining us remotely, but coming on screen, is Barry Goldstein, noted musician, musical artist, well, look at that, and a long-time Hemi-Sync collaborator, and also known for various mainstream musical pursuits, including co-producing the Grammy-winning 2005 album 69 Freedom Special with the legendary Les Paul. Barry, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Barry has collaborated with many of the best-known self-help authors and teachers out there, including Dr. Joe Dispenza, Neil Donald Walsh, Dan Amen, and of course, Anita Moorjani, New York Times best-selling author of the books Dying to Be Me and What If This Is Heaven? So Anita travels internationally to give workshops and to speak. And this Hemi-Sync album that we produced together is called Pieces of Heaven. We'll play you a brief sample for it right now. This album was inspired by your famous now near-death experience, Anita. Would you care to just kind of briefly recount it for us?
Sure. So I had a near-death experience back in 2006 because I had end-stage cancer. I had lymphoma, which had spread throughout my entire lymphatic system. I had tumors, some of them the size of golf balls, from the base of my skull, all around my neck, in my chest, all the way down to my abdomen. At that point, I was suffering from lymphoma for 4 years. And I got to end stage, and at that point, My lungs were filled with fluid. My muscles had atrophied because my body was no longer absorbing nutrition. And on February the 2nd, 2006, I went into a coma. But in the coma, even though my physical body was in a coma, I had an out-of-body experience where I realized that that I had a purpose. I mean, and I felt amazing though. When I was outside of my body, I could see my body lying there on the hospital bed. And it wasn't like I was looking at it through physical eyes. It was more like an awareness, and I was aware. It was like I had 360-degree peripheral vision. And I felt so light and free and incredible. Yeah. And I felt so loved. It's just the most incredible feeling ever. I don't recall ever feeling that way in my life before. And all the pain was gone, and the fear of the cancer was gone. It was just all gone. And I then started to understand why I had the illness, and I started to understand why I had chosen to come into this life and my purpose and all these things. It was like being in this state of clarity. And there was a lot that happened in that realm. So I'm just giving you kind of the shortened version. Yeah. But I reached a point where I had a choice of whether to come back into this world, into the physical body, or stay there. No part of me wanted to come back. But I had this understanding, and I speak more about this like on my website and in my books, about how I encountered my deceased father on the other side. And my father wanted me to know that now that I knew the truth of who I really am, which means that I was more powerful. We all are. We're all a lot more powerful than we've been led to believe. So my father wanted me to understand that now that I knew this truth, that if I chose to go back into my body, that my body would heal very, very quickly. And so I did choose to come back into my body, and the cancer tumors just shrunk rapidly over the weeks right after coming out of the coma. So I came out of the coma on February the 3rd, about 36 hours after I'd gone in the coma. And the doctors couldn't believe it. Like within 4 days, some of the tumors had shrunk 60%. In 3.5 weeks, they were having difficulty finding the tumors. They thought they had got the wrong medical records when they were doing the comparison. Wow. In 5 weeks, they let me out of the hospital to go home and live my life cancer-free, and that was in 2006.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And so have you been cancer-free ever since? And,
yes.
And so you went on to write the books and become a teacher after that. Incredible stuff. And Barry, I know you've worked a lot with music in healing modalities. What do you think music has to do with states similar to the near-death experience or other extraordinary states of consciousness, expanded states of consciousness?
Yeah, well, a lot of what Anita's talking about, those states of unconditional love and feeling like you're floating, and also of feeling that unconditional love, not wanting to come back. You know, music has the ability to take us on those journeys in the same way, and especially when we're designing it that way and it's not a random experience, but we're looking to achieve that through the music and targeting those specific states. And we have the ability to bring people into more relaxed states where they can receive guidance, they can receive messages, they can feel that connection beyond themselves. So I think it's really part of the blueprint of music, why music is here. As we listen to it, and beyond art and entertainment, but as a tool for transformation. That that's really the target of it, is to take us to those states that Anita's talking about, whether it's in a near-death experience or whether it's just a listener sitting down and trying to move to that relaxed state. That's my belief and my passion, is we can get people there, utilizing music very effectively.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this relaxed state is key to a lot of things having to do with well-being. And lots of folks, I think, don't really understand what it means to be truly relaxed. They think if they're, at home after work with their feet up, watching TV, maybe having a beer, that they're relaxed. And that's not necessarily the case. It's kind of a state that has to be practiced and learned. And so one of the things that we do at Hemi-Sync is we try to help people relax by inducing alpha brain waves. So these are brain waves kind of between 7 to 14 hertz. And there have actually been studies done that show that with veterans who were suffering from PTSD at Walter Reed, they were listening to Hemi-Sync, and it seemed to help them on all 4 factors that were researched with very statistically significant results. And this happens by stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is something that is very difficult to do if you're sick and you're obsessed with a disease, with the illness, because that's very stressful. So learning how to relax from that state can be a challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, that state that we're talking about, that parasympathetic state, is when your body slows down in this encased mode with Hemi-Sync. You're slowing the brain waves down. And also within this piece that we created, during the meditative parts, I'm also targeting the heart at a relaxed state. So we have the ability to entrain in our brain, but we also have the ability to entrain our heart to a relaxed state.
Yeah.
And it's like a kind of like a 1-2 punch, because we could target that heart at a relaxed state, which is at about 60 beats per minute, which was what I did on the meditative parts. Our brainwaves are slowing down in accordance with that, and there are new studies that are showing that when we're in this coherent heart state, that we're producing more alpha brainwaves as well. So those 2 intelligences, the heart and the brain, are working together.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so beautiful about the coming together of our project that Anita and I did with Hemi-Sync, is that it's not an either or. It's really a power tool when you combine both, and the heart and the brain can both entrain to that parasympathetic state. The body has the ability to do so many beneficial things: to revitalize, to rejuvenate, to detox, to digest food better, to build the immune system. All of these things can happen by utilizing the technologies that we're talking about.
Well, getting the head and the heart to work together makes a lot of sense, because one of the keys to healing really is to feel the state of wellness. And so to feel the state of wellness, you have to kind of think it, and you have to have the emotion to go with it. And when you have those 2 working together, that's really when you have feeling, and that's when you have basically prayer that is impactful. And it also sounds a lot like the state that you experienced when you were in this, near-death transcendent state.
Yeah, what I'd like to add is that when I was in that state, I was in this state that was like so blissful and so beautiful and so peaceful. And it's almost like when you're in that state, you're out of the way, and so your body can do what it needs to do. But when we are stressed out and our brain is working all the time, even when we think we're relaxing in front of the TV, as you say, our cortisol is still amped up, and we're not actually relaxing. But so I often suggest to people to meditate, but meditating is not easy for everyone.
Right.
And I find it really hard to just meditate, but music and having the tools like something like this would make it so much easier.
Yeah.
And if somebody just allows themselves to get into that relaxed state using this every day, it's like you get your mind out of the way so that your body can do what it's supposed to do. Because actually our bodies are trying to heal all the time. Our bodies are smarter than we give it credit to be, and our bodies are reaching for healing. And that's what I realized when I was in that state, was that I had not allowed my body to heal because I was so fearful and I was so stressed out and I was always so depleted. But once you get out of the way, your body can kind of do what it needs to do.
That's a great way to put it. So think of this as training wheels for getting into a relaxed state, training wheels for meditation, and hopefully for healing. Wow. So that was a great summary. Anything else folks want to add? Or
I just want to say that the music for this was very specific, and Anita and I had many conversations during the process of this. I was very curious to see what she heard when she was in that state, and because I really wanted to simulate an experience where people would feel that same way. So for each of the passageways really are representative of part of Anita's journey. And we went back and forth to really create this experience for people. So it's not just music that was put together or even composed. I call it designer music, because it was designed for a specific reason and intention, and a vibration and a harmonic within it that I believe are all part of a recipe that creates that, that healing space for people to move into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barry really put a lot into it. So
he always does.
Yeah, and Barry's a perfectionist, and the music I thought was so beautiful. I love Barry's music, but when we were working on it together, he really was getting into the words, because I was like just it felt like I was just channeling the words I needed to say, and as I was putting the words out, Barry was like designing the music around the words, and it was just it was just the music is heavenly. I love it.
It is. That's why it's called Pieces of Heaven.
Well, it's a beautiful process. I mean, and it's one of my most life-changing and transformational experiences in collaboration. So I'm glad that it's rippling out and as well moving into a new audience with Hemi-Sync as well. So I think people are really going to get a lot out of it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think so too. And thank you both for collaborating with us, and we look forward to future projects.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
So Anita, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, just in reading the book, is, you had at first tried kind of a naturopathic, Ayurvedic route towards healing, where you went to India, and it really seemed like you were getting a lot better, if not healed. And then, you kind of got off of it when you went back home and you got on more of a Western track, I guess. And that's when you got sick again. And I guess you technically recovered under what was a Western regimen, but it was really the NDE that did it for you. So what advice, well, first, I guess, what do you take from that? And then what advice, if any, would you give to people that might be finding themselves in a similar health situation?
That's a great question. So what happened for me was that when I was diagnosed with the lymphoma, I was extremely fearful of the disease and of Western medicine, because in my environment, my best friend was dealing with cancer, a different type, but she was having Western medicine. She was having the chemotherapy, radiation, and everything, but it wasn't working, and she was deteriorating. And it looked to me as though the treatment was making her worse. That's what it appeared, and I'm not saying that's the case for everybody who has that treatment. But in that environment, I was very, very fearful of the cancer, and so what I did was I removed myself from that environment. I went to India, and I followed an Ayurvedic regime where I was doing yoga and doing the Ayurvedic treatments. And in that new environment, the word cancer wasn't even used. I was told that what I had was an imbalance in my body, and any disease comes from an imbalance. And so all they were trying to do was to balance everything within my body. And so every day I'd wake up, I'd do the yoga, I'd eat the right foods, and I'd learn to relax and everything. So I was there for 6 months, and the lymph nodes that had been swollen, which is what lymphoma is, they all started to decrease in size. They kind of softened, they got decreased. I felt better, I felt really good. I could feel myself really healing. I was probably 70%, 80% healed. They were like 80% gone. And then I decided that I could go back home and continue the regimen. And I'd been gone for about 6 months, and I missed home. I missed my family. And so when I went home, what I was faced with, though, was that my best friend, she was even worse, and I was shocked to see how much she deteriorated. And she was having all these different treatments and surgeries and everything. And so that was a shock. And I was in that environment where I was surrounded by people who believed only in allopathic medicine and doctors and oncologists. I was back in that environment.
Yeah.
And everybody was asking me, so what did you do? How, what have you been doing for your cancer? And suddenly it was like back to the fear of cancer and the word cancer, because the environment I was in, they didn't even use that word.
Yeah.
It was all about treating yourself with no fear. So anyway, I started to feel all this fear, and they said, have you had yourself tested here? Have you had a scan since you've come back? And I got really afraid, because I knew that if I had a scan, I wasn't yet 100% there. I still had a little bit of work to do. And if they found the trace of cancer still in me, they would have immediately started administering the allopathic treatment. And so when I said, I don't really want to scan yet, they said, oh, you're crazy. And are you sure what you've been doing is not quackery? How do you know to trust them? And, and so for me, it didn't make a lot of sense, because what I had been doing was working. And here I was seeing what was being done to my friend was not working. Yeah. And I thought, why is it that they feel that what I'm doing is quackery, whereas this is acceptable? But yet at the same time, I started to feel super fearful, because everybody was kind of saying, you need to at least go get a scan. You need to see where it's at, what it's doing. And I kept saying, no, I can deal with it. I know the regime. I know what it is I have to do every day. But I found that it wasn't just knowing what to do. It's not just about the diet and doing the yoga. It's your state of mind. I was back in an environment where there was this fear around cancer. There was this, where it's this whole thing with the allopathic medicine. And so I got super fearful. I started to feel the lymph nodes starting to harden again, and it started to come back. I went and finally had a scan done, because I could feel I was deteriorating. And that's when the doctors told Danny that it was too late, that I had only 3 months to live. And once I realized that, I deteriorated dramatically. Yeah. Within 6 weeks, I was on my deathbed. And yet the prior year, I was doing so well when I was in India, in an environment where they didn't even talk about cancer, where they didn't even use that word.
Right.
And that has affected my thinking so much, because I have since learned that I am someone who's highly suggestible, and I'm not the only one like that. Apparently there's a lot of people like this, where if I'm told that I'm feeling fantastic, that there's nothing wrong with me and I have nothing to fear, and this is what you have to do, I will be, I'll be able to follow it, and I'll get healthy. Yeah. But if I'm told that I have 3 months to live, I probably will only have 3 months to live. Right. I am someone who's highly suggestible, and I think I'm not the only one like that. Yeah. And that really impacts the way I view medicine. And so if I had to give advice to anybody out there, I would say that you need to do whatever treatment empowers you. Choose a treatment and a protocol, and also a healthcare practitioner that empowers you. If allopathic treatment empowers you, great, do that. If alternative empowers you and makes you feel good and less fearful, great, you should do that. If it's a combination, do that. But get people to support you on your journey, and do not surround yourself with people who are going to make you second guess your choices. That would be my advice.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Also, I think it's so interesting that from a sound perspective as well, that even we're constantly interpreting words and how those words relate to our physical body. We're sending messages to our bodies. When someone's in an office and you hear the word cancer, how is your body interpreting the energy behind those words when your doctor is telling you that?
Yes.
And what is your body going into doing right there in that moment? We have a pharmacy in our body that's producing beneficial hormones and the hormones that are not beneficial. And we move into those states of anxiety and stress and fear, and our bodies start producing cortisol. Our immune systems have less to fight with. right? And also that when we move to those states of fear or anxiety or these lower vibrational emotions, that we actually form incoherent heart rhythms as well. And that's a prime indicator, of our heart rate variability. When we're in the positive states of love and appreciation, we can improve our heart rate variability, which in turn is our beat to beat measures or differences in our heart rate that allow us to adapt to stress.
Yeah.
And so when we're in these states of fear and anxiety, and although it's not something we always talk about in the sound healing community, our linguistics and how we're telling our bodies around whatever our prognosis is, has such a humongous effect on our health and how we work with our healing our body as opposed to tearing our body down.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, the words we use, the energy behind the words.
Yes.
And also music can be antidotal in those cases as well. When you were in those states of fears, and that's really a lot of what this release is about. How do we move people to states when they are in fear, right? And they're feeling all of those things. Can they reach into a sound toolbox, and pull something out that even if it's for 10 or 20 minutes, that those fear levels come down and the body starts producing the more beneficial hormones, that we can create a program to really move against those negative emotions like fear and anxiety. So I think it's a great conversation.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Very well said, Barry. That's so true. And that's why it's so important. I actually, although we've been using the word cancer because of the topic, but I very rarely, or I try not to use it unless I have to. When I'm talking to people, dealing with their disease and issues and physical challenges, I tend not to use that word as far as I can, because that word has an energy that causes a reaction in people's bodies. And I also find it ironic that our medical system can be so fearful, the way they deal with disease. It can be so fearful, whereas when you're going through a disease, that's when you want your body to be at its best. You don't want it to have those negative reactions because you want it to provide the healing hormones and the endorphins and everything that it needs for healing.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important too that you surround yourself, as you said, with a team, because that fear is so easily fed by other people's fear when they hear it.
100%.
To the point where someone who's diagnosed with the C word, after a while they don't want to tell other people because they feel it's building upon that same fear. I have a friend who also, he's been going through treatment, and he picked allopathic as what he believed in, but he has never called it cancer ever. He's always like, going in for a treatment this week. I'm treating, what the challenge is. And he's done very well because of the mindset. And also he doesn't talk a lot about it, only with a select group of people who he knows really support that.
That's
his choices.
really important.
That's smart.
Yeah, that's really smart, because even when I was going through it, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk to people because I knew the first thing they'd do is ask me how it was and how's the progress. And every time you met someone, that's what they wanted to know. And so I would avoid meeting people. I hated talking about it over and over again.
Yeah, so having that core group and like a spiritual team behind you that's is a big part of the process.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So pay attention to your feelings, folks.
Yes.
Let that be your guide. Don't ignore them.
And your words. And your words are...
Choose your words carefully.
And pay attention to how your words make you feel. Yeah.
Right, the emotion that's connected to them.
Yeah, that's so great.
All part of sound healing.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thanks for joining us, folks. If you liked this, please feel free to share it up. Leave a comment, ask a question. We'll try to get back to you. Be sure to follow us on social media, as well as on YouTube. Subscribe to both of our email lists, or all three of our email lists, and make sure you don't miss a thing. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.